supply chain, consulting, warehouse operation, market share, revenue, material handling, distribution, transportation.
Hi, David.
How are you?
Good. End of the week.
End of the week.
And this is one of our exciting behind the headlines episodes.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Domino's Pizza.
Domino's Pizza. That's
Frenching.
Yeah.
Frenching.
We're going to talk about Domino's. So everybody knows, but maybe some people don't appreciate, Domino's, the world's biggest pizza chain.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, an interesting fact, which is probably not true anymore, but I remember I went to a Domino's presentation somewhere around 2015, and Domino's was the third largest online retailer in the world.
Holy
Meaning
crap.
in those days, people making purchases, Domino's was number 3.
On the web.
Yep. So kind of cool. But why are we talking about them this week? What's so headliney about them?
Well, headlining is a few things. Well, it started with the fact that some of the sales are going down. They needed to make some adjustments. One of which was to go against or do something that they previously had said they would never do, is to participate in the platforms such as Uber Eats and I forget the other one with whom they've done.
I think it was Postmates.
Postmates, there you go. But they realized that in order
they have always traditionally been very much against it. They wanted to control every aspect of a customer's journey.
Yeah. Vertically integrated, and
not allow people to order Domino's through the app,
third party
like Uber Eats. And so, with their flagging sales, they decided they had to make that change, or that it was just too tempting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh, it does make sense when not necessarily everyone wants to eat the same thing, or the one thing that these platforms have enabled for the consumer is a group of people don't need to order all from the same place, but could put everything on one order. So now
I've never even thought of that part.
Yeah.
I know as a consumer, to me, here in Quebec, we of course have the famous Saint-Hubert chicken.
Yeah.
People I don't know outside of Montreal or Quebec generally, but Montreal specifically, don't understand that our rotisserie chicken is the finest chicken in the world.
That's great.
And Saint-Hubert is, of course, the fast food version of that, the mega chain of it. But, there was a time I had a folder on my phone with like 4 or 5 different restaurant apps, including Domino's, because my children, one in particular, whose name rhymes with Baggy, she would insist we would eat Domino's pizza. If you got really normal, good quality pizza from your local pizzeria shop, she would be livid. What you needed is Domino's pizza.
Yeah.
And so you'd have all these apps to order the food. And now, of course, I would never go outside of Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats
DoorDash,
to order food.
Yeah.
It's just too convenient. Everything's set up there, no matter what I'm ordering. So it seemed like an inevitable collapse of Domino's position that they'd have to allow it.
Yeah, and they're allowing it, but from what I read, and I know you didn't seem sure about it, so maybe I'm not sure about it, but the delivery part remains.
Domino drivers are going to keep the delivery.
Yeah, so you're kind of really only taking one part of the benefit.
Right. Well, so the tradition has been, of course, Domino's famous promise of 30 minutes or less, or it's free.
Nicola had a good idea. We should have ordered one as this podcast started and see if it ever would arrive by the end.
Well, that's torture for the audience. They think it's going to be 30 minutes. It's not.
No, don't worry.
So, So anyway, very interesting that they've retained that, and we'll see how long that lasts.
Well, retaining the delivery part is, when we have a lot of food service clients, and as we know, the delivery, the driver is basically, especially with a distributor, not the only, but one of the
prime
contact between a customer.
Your client relationship goes through the driver.
So
and Domino's, it's the same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So as a distributor, you want your drivers to be presentable, courteous with the customer. So here you kind of keep some control on the way they look, how they drive. Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. And it's funny, we talk about food service. One of the reasons why we thought Domino's would be a great topic today is that in 2 weeks we have the annual IFDA, International Food Service Distributors Association show. One of the bedrock industries that we serve, and one of the bedrock shows that we'll attend, where all the distributors from across North America and beyond will gather, and we're going to talk about lots of the exciting things that are happening in the restaurant world and how that affects their supply chains. But one thing that's really interesting, of course, with Domino's, we have some insight on Domino's technology and its supply chain, and I think a lot of people who may take things a little cynically. Like, I remember, this is related, okay, but I remember finding out through a project that the Kraft dinner mix
was real cheese.
Was just cheese.
Yeah.
And I remember I discovered that I had always assumed it was some chemical, witch's brew of something that Walter White would create and put on his macaroni. But no, and then you think about it. Of course, it's desiccated cheese is the cheapest thing to do for them. Why would they go off and start adding things to it?
Yeah.
Lasts forever, and so cynically, we could always, when you look at these giant chains, world's biggest pizza chain, we may have ideas about what their supply chain is like. But in fact, a slight exaggeration, but only slight exaggeration, that pizza that arrives at your front door, Domino's can effectively map out where every ingredient on that pizza came from, like down to the field. That's how good their traceability program is.
Yeah.
The quality of food, in terms of taste, could have long debates on, and again, a daughter that I have whose name rhymes with Baggy has one opinion. I don't share it. I think there really actually are better pizzas around, but in terms of food safety, the traceability, the investments Domino's has made into field to literally, not fork, because only weirdos eat pizza with a fork, field to hand,
traceability,
field to mouth traceability is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember also, I'm saying that, and I don't even know if it's because of the WMS, but when you're talking about Domino being third largest retailer online, you could actually also follow the steps of your pizza is being prepared.
Yeah.
Your pizza is on, being maybe not put in a box, but then
the driver. Exactly. Yes.
And you had all these steps. So this is a marketing gimmick, but it's still. It was
real. It was real.
Exactly.
And so if we go back to that, they make their own dough, centralized in facilities, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They cut their own vegetables. They slice their own pepperoni. All of this is controlled in their supply chain. There's no third party there's third parties obviously involved in their supply chain, but it's so well controlled, and so every lot, every batch, as I said, is tracked through the entire process. Raw ingredients through manufactured goods, which we would call works in process, because unbaked ball of dough is just a whip, as we say, right?
Yeah.
But all of that, all the way to your front door. Now, I say that, but I'm not sure if that is done globally. I know
Globally,
that's
yeah.
the North American supply chain.
You
I
have the
don't know
experience
to
elsewhere.
what extent Domino's controls its supply chain. I'm sure it has specifications and quality requirements outside of North America. But I have been to Korea, as you know, where I've eaten Domino's pizza. So when you're in Korea for a long time, for let's say a week, right? As much as you're enjoying the exotic discovery of new flavors,
You
there,
wanna
there
eat
will be a
something.
point in time you collapse and you just want a little bit of home, right? And that means McDonald's. You know, I don't eat I rarely eat McDonald's, but in Korea, I cherish the burger. But I did collapse and go to Domino's, and Korean pizza.
It's not a real pizza.
I mean, I think I described it as an edible kaleidoscope. It's as if Hunter S. Thompson, you know, just
When-
got off an acid trip and made a pizza. It's got sweet potatoes. It's got like 6 different sauces squiggled over it. It doesn't even. It's just a terrifying, you know, like Christmas bark or something. It's just a terrifying thing to, and I actually discovered there that maybe just some cheese, pepperoni, and a few vegetables is a winning combination.
Does the trick.
Simplicity rules. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The other thing that Domino's has recently talked about, made a nice video actually that I'm sure Jeremy will link to in this,
It is nice.
is some of the new technologies they're bringing as they manufacture new dough facilities.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, well, they needed to increase capacity, but they also had to improve the efficiency of it. So, I mean, making the dough itself is, mixing the ingredient, that remained somewhat similar, but it's then once the mix has been done and then start being poured and cut into balls of dough, and then going through, the entire plant, having those are steps that would be done manually by like chains of workers that are basically, in those unpleasant environment, chilled, some of them even frozen, where they just manipulate balls of dough, have to fill in trays. So they were able to eliminate quite a lot of these steps or these positions, which, as many other companies, they bring up labor scarcity as one of the reasons why they would do it.
Scarcity for the English
Not
people.
scarcity. Labor shortage. I should have go with shortage to justify such investment, and it's pretty impressive when you see it, because again, it's the ball of dough. When they manipulate it, it's not frozen. It's actually fresh.
Right. Yeah.
So the ability, it's pretty impressive and extremely fast. So anyway, with the labor scarcity, well, you can imagine that there's the job desirability that is something that where it's kind of okay, where you say, we don't have enough labor. Well, the jobs that people don't really want to do are the ones that you should be replacing.
Yeah, it's like, it's sort of, it's two sides of the same coin. We say, hey, we have a labor scarcity issue, we have a labor shortage issue, and is that because there's absolutely no one to do the job, or is that because there is such a sufficient quantity of more pleasant jobs that people are not willing to do these unpleasant jobs?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think back to when I was a little kid and we had like the I Love Lucy show on every once in a while. There's this, everybody knows this who's my age or older, this famous episode where she's working on an assembly line, and little wrapped candy's coming and she's trying to fill the boxes, and eventually, of course, she's running behind and she starts eating the candy and stuffing them all in all her pockets, and then there's the Laverne and Shirley show, which was another one about these two women who worked on a beer line, and they were so bored. One was asleep, the other was doing her nails, and like the mouse in a bottle was going by, and it's a funny way of describing that, these jobs where you're doing monotonous, repetitive, brainless work it becomes harder and harder to fill that when people have slightly more interesting options. And when you know, and so automation helps do that. And what happens as a consequence is the people who do go work in these automated facilities, well, there's a little bit more intellectual stimulation and challenge in their job, because now they're operating machinery,
Monitoring.
and they're monitoring, and and so their jobs engage them and their brain more, which makes suddenly labor scarcity issue go away, because you actually have created an interesting work environment for these people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the video is worth looking at it. I always like looking at machines doing that kind of stuff. It's the pace at which it can work. The video doesn't talk about necessarily the financial justification of it, but or if other plants will be converted to it. But yeah, it's pretty impressive.
So there we are, Domino's, caving, opening the Uber Eats world up to Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
But at the same end, at the other end of the supply chain, barreling, actually on both ends of the supply chain, barreling into the future, right?
Yeah.
Taking Uber Eats and accepting consumers for who they are and what they want, and at the same time creating, through investments in automation, the kind of jobs that these very same consumers are willing to do. It's a great story. And in between, full end-to-end traceability.
It's a good story.
It is a good story, and I think we should rate, the company's stories. And I think Domino's has a 4 out of 5 story right there. I think it's a great company, regardless of the heartburn that it induces in me whenever my daughter Baggy requires me to eat their fine goods.
Nice. Korea is the box identical, because they have a special shaped box, with the 2 corners.
I actually ate in store.
That must have been boring.
So I don't remember if they had a box. I just remember looking at the thing and thinking, I have no idea. I didn't understand. This was early days, so I didn't even understand how to order a pizza. I did not expect, the crust has wedges of sweet potato.
Ugh.
And I know lots of people love their sweet potato, but after kale, I don't think there is a more overrated food vegetable in the world than the sweet potato. To me, it's like mushy candy cane.
I read an article where there was they did the top whatever study of what is the most the vegetables with the most nutrient, and I actually forget what the first one was. Something that probably wasn't very good to eat, but sweet potato was so low on the list.
No nutrient.
No nutrient.
Ah, even better.
Yeah, it's just less worse than a normal potato, I guess.
But wait, a normal potato has tons of nutrients.
Does it?
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't good in the list.
Look, you just avoid it all, right?
Yeah.
Just some leafy greens, some red peppers, all the color of the peppers. You'll be fine.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done.
All right, have a great week.
Yeah, same to you.
I mean.
Okay, thanks.